Welcome to the San Gorgonio Chapter Trail Talk series. My name is John St. Clair, and I will be your Zoom host tonight. And I want to go over some of the rules for this Zoom session. The first thing is that everybody should be muted, and except for the speakers. And if you have a question during the presentation, what we would like you to do is put it in the chat section. If you move your mouse, you should see a menu appear at the bottom of your screen, and there's a talking bubble icon with the word chat under it. If you click on that, then it will open a window where you can type in your question so you don't forget it. And then we'll make sure that all questions get answered. And the default is the meeting group chat, and that's what you want, and that's where you type it in. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that this Zoom session, as are all the Trail Talk sessions, is being recorded. And by tomorrow morning, the recording will be posted on the San Gorgonio Chapter YouTube channel. And so if you have to leave before the talk's over, you can always check in tomorrow at the San Gorgonio Chapter YouTube channel and watch the rest of it. Or if you really like this Zoom session, you can tell your friends and they can go listen to it on YouTube as well. If you registered before 4 o'clock, you should have received an email from me that included the link to the YouTube channel. And I will actually right now put that link in the chat section, and I'll do that at the end as well. Okay, I just pasted it in. Okay, so the link to the YouTube channel is now in the chat section. Now, before we get to our talk, I'd like to tell you a couple of things. One is our outings, our real live outings, are filling up. We are getting more and more outings posted in the events section of the San Gorgonio chapter website. And if you want to get into the outdoors, and we have hopefully an outing that will work for you. The other thing is next month, the Trail Talk is going to be given by me. And I'm going to be talking about my hiking experience in the Grand Canyon. I went with a group of 8 of us, hiking friends, that spent 3 days hiking in Grand Canyon, 2 nights in the bottom of the canyon, staying at Phantom Ranch. And I will talk about how that works if you want to do that. I also have lots of beautiful photos of the Grand Canyon. And I must say, if you have beautiful photos, or if you've seen beautiful photos of the Grand Canyon before, but have never been there, being there is even better than the most beautiful photo. It is really breathtaking. When I see my photos, it reminds me of how breathtaking it was. But I want to go back again because it's just incredible. So that's next month's Trail Talk topic. Topic is hiking in the Grand Canyon. Now, tonight's topic is Sequoia National Park and After the Fires. So Juliann Anderson is the speaker, and Juliann is the chapter co-chair for the outings in the San Gorgonio chapter, and she is an outings leader as well. And she also is on the leadership training committee. And by the way, very soon this week, we will be posting the leadership training course as an event. And if any of you are interested in becoming an outings leader, that's how you do it. You register for the leadership training course and go through the training. The date is April 12th, and that will be showing up in the events calendar by the end of the week, certainly. So back to Juliann. She's going to be sharing her experience on a car camping trip, a Sierra Club car camping trip in Sequoia, and has some photos to show you and interesting things to talk about. So I'm going to put the spotlight on her and take it away, Juliann.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for that very kind and interesting introduction. A few things before we get on to the Sequoia After the Fires presentation. I do want to invite you, as John said, on our outings. We are endeavoring to offer a wide array of outings. I myself, I've been trying to do some regularized outings every month. So, for those that are close to here in Riverside or close to Riverside, on the first and third Sunday of every month, we do a fitness walk up our own Mount Rubidoux, and we do it at dawn. We do it at 6 to beat the crowds, and it's gorgeous. You get to see the dawn over the city, and you have a 365-degree view of the surrounding area, and it's just lovely. And we're coming down the mountain just as everybody else is going up. So it's a very nice time to go, and you still have your day completely open. On the second Sunday of the month, I've just instituted something quite new. I'm calling it my the California State Citrus Park All Abilities Stroll. And I wanted to include in our outings a place where everyone would feel comfortable. um, the Sierra Club is starting to work with the Riverside Blue Zones project, which is a heavily funded project for City of Riverside and four other communities in the inland, where they're trying to foster Blue Zones principles like several cities around the world, including Loma Linda, and fostering longevity. They found that in several communities in Japan, Italy, other areas, and Loma Linda, people that exercise, are outdoors, have a sense of community, have good nutrition, have a sense of purpose, uh, are living into their hundreds at a far higher proportion than other parts of the world. So, um, Sierra Club is, I think, well equipped to be part of that. We are organized. We like to be outdoors as a group. And we certainly have a sense of purpose for our endeavors to enjoy, explore, and protect the outdoors. So we invite you to join that. I I'm at the Citrus Park. It's ADA compliant. We do a short walk, less than half a mile. So if anyone you know or you are feeling like you want to have an easier walk, if you're in a walker or slower of gait. We have a contingent from Riverside Blindness Support. We met with Pete Benavides this last Sunday, who is the director of that. So people who are visually impaired, people with children and strollers, people who just don't want to be out walking alone or are feeling somehow uncomfortable. I want you to come down, meet us at our beautiful State Citrus Park, which tells the story of the American citrus industry, which started in Riverside in the inland in the 1880s. It's got a lovely museum. So we're going to take a walk. We'll have a little talk, look at all the dozens of varieties of citrus that are labeled, see the gorgeous view of the mountains this time of year, and then we'll be back at our very excellent small museum and a very nice gift shop. And clean bathrooms, good place to meet, safe, flat, and paved. And as I said, ADA compliant. So we invite everyone to come to that. On the fourth Sunday of the month, I'm doing a harder hike each month. This month and in February, we're out in Joshua Tree National Park. We're doing some standard, beautiful Joshua Tree hikes. This month, it will be Ryan Mountain, and that is on Sunday the 26th. And then in February, it will be Lost Horse Mine on uh, Sunday, February 23rd. And we're meeting out there at 7, and the details are in the list. So, long story short, Come join us. That's just my set of hike. John just posted a set of 11 hikes in the Los Serranos region, up by the foothills in Ontario and Claremont and in that general area. And we have many others. Christina Torres is doing a number of very interesting hikes out by Whitewater, and in the Moreno Valley area. And we have a host of others. So, you know, dust off your boots. It's a new year. Let's get outside and get walking around and hiking and moving. Much to do. And if you have ideas for other hikes, please let us know. Finally, before I begin, it's not by accident that we're talking about Sequoia this month and then Grand Canyon next month at our trail talks. We're offering a number of car camps, of camping trips this year, and I hope to have a Sierra Club trip squared away in June. So in Sequoia, a car camping trip, and then later this fall, I hope to also lead a Grand Canyon car camping trip. To probably the big beautiful Mather uh, campground there, the standard campground on the South Rim. So if you're interested in breaking out your tent and your sleeping bag and your pad and all that good stuff, your stove, there will be at least two car camping trips that I'm leading on the subjects of this month and next month's Trail Talk. Now, speaking of, let's go ahead and share screen and talk about Sequoia. Go, go. Okay.
It worked.
It worked. Hip hip. Okay. Let's see. Hmm. Let's get to my slideshow. There we go. There we go. Trying to get it to do the slideshow, John. Huh. Huh. Having a little bit of a failure of modern technology here, folks. Well, it's not going into slideshow mode for me here, which is very odd.
Juliann,
Yeah,
I think you might have to, when you click slideshow,
yeah.
click it on again. And then you see underneath there's all those little things. I think you have to click
Play
one
from
of
start.
those.
Got it.
Yeah, all right.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Okay, here we are, folks. Not a failure of modern technology, failure of the presenter. Sequoia After the Fires. Let's talk about what happened last year and three years ago, going on 4 years ago. Last year, we put together a car camp in July to Sequoia National Park, and we almost scrapped it. But Christina, who just spoke, was visiting relatives in Merced and said, "Hey, I'll go." So the two of us decided to go ahead and do it anyway. And I'm glad we did because it was a most interesting uh, experience. I hadn't been to Sequoia since the massive KNP complex fires of late 2021. I'd actually been in the Yosemite area while the fires in Sequoia were burning, and many people who worked in Sequoia National Park were being transferred to staff things in Yosemite, and it was like people were fleeing the scene. Um, and the fires were unbelievable in Sequoia. They started as several and they came together. So, and it was eventually named the KNP Complex Fires. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. The park in general, and then the impact of the fires. As Christina and I saw it during our trip last July, and obviously we're lay people, we're not, forestry or fire experts, but this is just what we saw, what you might expect next year or this year if we go in June or July to the park. The park has been vastly changed, as you would expect. Um, but still very beautiful. And I think it's a testament to what's going on in a larger sense to California's forests. I think we need to be up there looking at it, seeing what's happening, understanding it, grieving it in a way, but understanding what's happening to our forests, and as we are stewards of them. And in the Sierra Club, part of our purpose is not only to explore and enjoy, but to protect and, do the best we can with that. So that said, here's what we saw at the historic sign. Um, Much damage, much burnt pine. Um, but then as you drive along the General's Highway and it winds along, you'll see green and verdant, and then you'll make a turn and it will be uh, vastly damaged by fire. So this is what's at the beginning. By the same token, there's or actually to the converse of all the damage, they've just built a beautiful new visitor center in Lodgepole, which is the kind of the headquarters of Sequoia. And we stopped in, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So new things are happening since I last visited it before 2021. So there are things going on there that are positive. And as you may recall from the news coverage, there many things were saved. So the infrastructure was I think almost totally saved in the park. The forest, however, was impacted in a lot of areas, and so is changed for what you may remember. Here's the General Sherman tree, um, the largest tree in the world by volume, and it was saved. And we'll show you some of the firefighters' efforts to do that. Here's the standard Park Service kind of logo for the park and literature for the park, giving you a feeling of the orange barked sequoia trees in the conifer forest and how outstanding they are. I remember Mark Twain wrote, and I totally understand this because when I first saw the sequoias, they kind of reminded me of celery. And he says they're like giant vegetables. That's how he referred, I think, in Roughing It to the sequoias, like giant vegetables in the forest. And they really stand out for those of you that haven't seen that really remarkable orange bark and these huge trunks. Here they are. Um, Talks about the land of giants. Sequoia, as you know, has 3 or 4 different zones. In addition to the Sequoia zone, and as you know, the Sequoia zone is between 5,000 and 8,000 feet in sort of this band that's almost exclusively in the Western Sierra Nevada. They don't grow anywhere else in the world. Um, this is it. And in the KNP complex fires, 20% of the sequoias were destroyed. So, no lie, this was a species changing fire in many respects. Some scientists estimate that the sequoias may not survive many more fires of this ilk. So we'll see. But they grow in this band that's between 5,000 and 8,000 feet. That's the climate and the altitude that they like. So that's the kind of sequoia zone. The other zones are the foothills, which are the oak forests coming up from like Fresno and Visalia, below 5,000 feet. The canyons, like the beautiful Kings Canyon, north, which runs east-west, and you can access it from Fresno, Highway 180. And the alpine regions above, which some of the most beautiful hiking in California and in the world at Sequoia. It's just stunning. And probably the highlight of the hiking for long distance backpackers is the High Sierra Trail, which you can access uh, near the giant forest. So and that has a remarkable story. 100 years ago, there was a very far-seeing park superintendent, Colonel Allensworth, I believe his name was. And there was a proposal to build a highway even then, Model Ts, that kind of thing. but a highway across the Sierra, and he nixed it. He did not allow it. And instead, they built a trail, the High Sierra Trail. And by doing that and not, bisecting the High Sierra with a highway, he preserved that over 200-mile swath of wildland. And when you think about it, there are no traversing highways between Kennedy Meadows and the Tioga Pass. So it truly is wild, wilderness, and very important to keep it that way. Now, speaking of, the area, this is a general map. And you can see here, here's the Eastern Sierra and our own beloved 395. Bishop is up here. So we have Manzanar and the Lone Pine area right here on 395. Big Pine's up here. So Sequoia Kings Canyon is due west of Big Pine and Lone Pine. So Big Pine up here, Lone Pine here. So it's due west over the crest of the Sierra. To the west of the park, here's Fresno. You can enter the park on Highway 180, and it takes you right in. And then you drop down on the General's Highway down here to Lodgepole in the Giant Forest, and you can exit at Highway 198 to Visalia. So the two entries are the southern entry, Visalia, to the Ash Mountain Visitor Center. The Ash Mountain management and both parks since 1940 have been administered together as they're two separate national parks, but they're run together. And they did that at the start of World War II to save money, and they've always kept it that way. So this is park headquarters here at the Foothills Ash Mountain entrance, and then you have the Kings Canyon entrance up here. And you can go down to Kings Canyon and see the Cedar Grove Visitor Center, or you drive down via the General's Highway to Lodgepole and the Visitor Center there, and exiting out the foothills area. Here's a more detailed park map, albeit small. Just so you know, you're coming up through Visalia on Highway 198, and this is the steeper, windier route if you're planning your route. If you don't like driving a windy road, just boom up the 99 to 180 out of Fresno, and that's an easier road to drive, really. It's less windy, and it brings you straight into Grant Grove, the northern part of these two parks. But the Visalia route is very interesting because you're going up through a lot of the foothills area and the oak forests. A little bit of history, and we'll go through it then, but that's the route that the Buffalo Soldiers pioneered when the park started in the early days. They were the U.S. Cavalry Buffalo Soldiers, African American soldiers, were brought in to administer the park after they started having a lot of problems with sheep and cattle, trampling everything. They just needed to have some order and some security. Those cavalry soldiers built the General's Highway in a summer. One summer, they built it. And I mean, what a tremendous amount of work. So kudos to them. So it came up from Visalia, and it came up to past Morro Rock, and they named it the General's Highway, by the way. I mean, this is 1890. It's the second national park after Yellowstone. And 25 years after the Civil War. So a lot of people were veterans. A lot of people were very conscious of that, and they named it for the generals, Grant and Sherman. In fact, they named the two largest trees, the Sherman tree and the Grant tree. So up the General's Highway, past Hospital Rock, Morro Rock, and then all of a sudden, for those of you that have driven that, you go past that 5,000-foot level and you start seeing the sequoias. You start seeing these huge orange-barked behemoths, and it's just shocking and beautiful into the giant forest. And that's what John Muir, who came here, named it. He named it the Giant Forest. Back in the day, especially shortly after World War II, everybody was just bursting to go camping, and they had a campground here in the giant forest. Um, and they have since the 1960s, they've moved it to Lodgepole because there were so many campers. There was such an explosion of camping and people wanting to get out and see the outdoors that people were parking their cars on the Sequoia roots and they were damaging the trees. There was just such this mob of campers. So what used to be the campground is now the Sequoia National Park Museum. It's a beautiful museum, fairly recently redone, stunning. Um, and that's where back in the day they used to they had bears coming and performing at the garbage dump, and they did all kinds of crazy things that they did before people knew better. That's all gone. But what remains is a beautiful and still lush route from that old camping area, now the museum, to what's called Crescent Meadow. And Christina and I had a very nice lunch there, and that's where the trailhead of the High Sierra Trail is. The meadow itself is what John Muir back in the day in the 1890s called the gem of the Sierra. The gem of the Sierra. And it is lovely. And there's an old log cabin there called Tharp's Log. He was the first European American to be up there, had cattle, and was one of the pioneers to understand the beauty of it. And the cattle were removed eventually, and the park developed. Going past the Crescent Meadow area, you come into the heart of the giant forest, the General Sherman tree, the Congress Trail, and you see the heart of all these huge, beautiful sequoias. And this is where they've been doing a lot of backfiring over the years, and they saved the giant forest during the fires. Drive a few miles further, you're at past Wolverton, which is stunning hiking. You come up here to the Lodgepole Visitor Center and Village. That's where the new visitor center is. That's where the Lodgepole campground is. Very nice, but quite crowded. The Tonopah Falls hiking trail, which is lovely and popular. Then, as you continue along, the General Sherman Highway takes, or the General's Highway takes a hairpin turn. You go past the lovely Waxahachie Lodge, Clinton era. It's about 25, 30 years old from the 90s. New lodge. If you want to have a lodge experience in the park, Waxahachie is where you go. Absolutely lovely. First class restaurant, very nice. Um, Very nice rooms of various levels and expense, but some of them are pet friendly. Uh, my spouse and I had a wonderful time there a number of years ago and just enjoyed it very much. Continue along, and there's my favorite campground here, which I hope will be opening this year. I'm waiting to see next month if they're going to open it for the summer. It's Dorst Creek. And here's Dorst Creek. Large, beautiful campground with group campsites that are just the best. This is my favorite campground in California. It's lush and beautiful and still is after the fires. Um, if it's not open, we will go to Lodgepole, which is here. Very extensive, it's an older campground. They're more close together, but it's very nice. And there's lots going on there. A lot of ranger talks. The village is right there. The giant forest is right there. It's kind of in the middle of everything, so it's fun. And then going past Doris Creek is kind of one of the best kept secrets, I think, is the campground where Christina and I pitched our tents. It's called Big Meadow. It's in the Forest Service uh, part of the forest here. The National Forest is kind of here between the main parts of the park. Uh, so there you can have the more primitive experience of no water, vault toilets, but a very beautiful, beautiful campground. We'll see that in a few minutes. Right over here at Big Meadow. Best kept secret. Had no trouble getting in there. It's about 5 miles along this logging road, and they were massively logging it, uh, even 3 years after the fires. Um, and then as you proceed further on here, this is how you get in from Fresno, and you're up in the Grant Grove area of Kings Canyon National Park. Lovely area, big visitor center, village, store, many campgrounds. The Azalea and Sunset campgrounds are lovely. And this is the way you get down, the way you go down into Kings Canyon on Highway 180 as it goes down into the canyon and the campgrounds down there, which are beautiful in their own right. And like Yosemite, Kings Canyon is a glacial canyon and absolutely lovely. But the Grant Grove area, very, very nice. The grove there is regal. The Grant tree is lovely and huge. Um, and if you want to have another lodge experience, the Muir Lodge, the John Muir Lodge, slightly more rustic than Waxahachie, but newish, also kind of Clinton era, 90s, and a very nice place to stay. And there are also some older cabins there too, but the Muir Lodge is quite nice. Anyway, so a little bit of history. Indigenous peoples. Um, we had a number of tribes, the Monos, the Yakuts, the Paiute, the Tabatalabal, and the Western Shoshone, among others, lived or passed through the area. After the gold rush or during the gold rush, after 1849, where hundreds of thousands of people flooded into the Western Sierra for gold and displaced, and at times hunted down people, like in Yosemite. A lot of the tribes fled east over the crest into the Eastern Sierra, creating a lot of tension and conflict among the tribes that are in the Eastern Sierra. So 1849, the gold rush was a time of great tumult in this area, and the tribes dispersed. Um, if you come up the Visalia way that I showed you, there's a campground. It's one of the foothill campgrounds. It was a village before the gold rush. It was an Indian village, and you can see why. It's beautiful and flat. I mean, there are RVs parked there today, but it was beautiful and flat. But there are petroglyphs there that you can go see. But they stopped in 1850. They've dated them to 1850, and there are grinding areas right close there, but they're fascinating. But after 1850, everybody fled and either melded into the ranching life or fled east over the crest. And then there's that whole other story about what happened in the 1860s when Bishop and the Eastern Sierra were settled, and the Indian Wars that went there, and the march up to Tehachapi of a lot of the Indians from the Bishop area. So California Indian history is not well told, and there's a lot going on right in this area of the Central Sierra. It became the second national park in 1890, primarily because of far-seeing people in Visalia, primarily people like John Muir, some newspaper editors in Visalia, people that realized that the frenzy of activity where they were building huge flumes. There are towns like the town of Sanger, Sanger, which is between Fresno and the park. They were built just to have these to tend these flumes that were coming down from the park, and they would cut down. They were clear cutting sequoias, and they would send them down these big flumes to Sanger, and they cut up the sequoias for shingles. That's what they used them for. Because sequoias aren't particularly good wood for building materials, but they used them for shingles. And before the park, they clear cut a few basins that are north of the Grant Grove, and you can see what happened. Completely clear cut, and there's huge stumps. It's shocking. And so people realized they needed to preserve this because it was all going to be taken. And in 1890, it was President Harrison declared it uh, and to save it from logging. And the odd thing about the park at that time, there was Sequoia, and then there was the General Grant National Park. The Grant Grove was a tiny little national park at that time. And then that stayed in place until 1940, right before the war. when FDR declared the Kings Canyon or the Kings Canyon National Park came through Congress, and the general grant was melded into that. So that's kind of the rough history of the park. The first rangers, 1891 to 1913, the U.S. Cavalry. And these were the Buffalo Soldiers, the African American soldiers that were cavalrymen at that time, and they were sent here. Um, and they were keeping order, fighting wildfires, ending illegal livestock grazing. I mean, John Muir called sheep hooved locusts because they were going up into the high country and eating everything and destroying the ecosystems there because they were not natural. Um, and this is when the General's Highway was built into a passable wagon road by these soldiers. First superintendent in 1905 was Walter Fry. Uh, and just to make you think about this wasn't that long ago. I mean, my grandmother was born in 1905. So this wasn't that long ago. And he was the first superintendent to mine this park. And the war began in 1914. 9 years later, troops left the park and the civilian management began. And that's one of the reasons, I think, why the Park Service came into play 2 years later. In 1916, Stephen Mather was the first superintendent or head of the Park Service. He was an advertising man and an outdoorsman and understood that there needed to be supervision in these parks. And he's the one that did the borax ads, 20 Mule Team Borax. That was Stephen Mather. And then he became the head of the Park Service and was so unbelievable in terms of establishing Park Service principles. So Sequoia was forming as all this was beginning nationwide. New infrastructure from 1960 to 1940. Building out the highway, building the entirety of the General's Highway in 1926, the year my mother was born. So all this stuff is happening. At that time, also, it's not listed here, the last grizzly was killed in Sequoia National Park in 1926. So the symbol on our state flag, the grizzly, they killed them already in the Verdugo Mountains in Los Angeles, in Southern California. That had happened before. But the last one was in Sequoia, and it was killed in 1926. So the grizzlies were decimated from California at that time, almost 100 years ago. Ash Mountain was built, better access to the giant forest. The CCC came in, Civilian Conservation Corps, during the Depression, built things out. So, and then, as I described before, the General Grant National Park became part of Kings Canyon. The parks were melded together. In the 60s, the Kings River was declared a wild and scenic river. Very important because the cities below had designs on damming it, much as San Francisco had dammed Hetch Hetchy up north outside of Yosemite. People wanted to dam the Kings River, and there was vast conservation, including the Sierra Club, disallowing that. So it is a wild and scenic river, undammed. Also in the 60s, the Walt Disney Company had plans to build a huge ski resort in what was called Mineral King, right outside of Visalia, in the very southerly part of the park. And that was a huge Sierra Club fight. We were the tip of the spear to save Mineral King from development and to include it in the national park in the 60s. So lots going on after World War II, as well as the understanding of the damage that the huge popular movement of camping movement had after the war and moving things to lodgepole and kind of saving the trees. So much, much more history than this, but this just gives you a basic idea. The new visitor center at Lodgepole talks a lot about fire for obvious reasons. The sequoias themselves are built to withstand a good deal of fire. If you just touch the bark, you realize how thick and kind of spongy and the bark is much thicker than other pines or other conifers. It's just this very, very thick, different bark, and it resists fire. Fire is a very natural part of sequoias. Um, in fact, the cones require fire to open, but the fires of the KNP complex often were so extreme and so hot and so devastating that it wasn't just the kind of understory fires that sequoias are built for, the smaller fires, but these went clear up into the top parts of the tree. And we'll show you about this certain groves in the area that were completely burned, not just damaged, but completely destroyed and burned. The Canopy Complex fire started on September 13th, 2021. That year, I remember that year, I was up in Yosemite at the time, in the fall of that year, but there had been a lot of lightning strikes all that fall. And in September, several of them struck in Sequoia. And the fires merged, the Paradise and Colony fires, they were named. They merged to be called the KNP complex of fires. So we have the pink. Oh, thank you. Yay. Thank you. Um, uh, the pink footprint is the KNP complex. And as you see, it encompasses practically the entire park. So nothing escaped. What was saved due to firefighting expediency uh, were the trees of the giant forest, the infrastructure at Lodgepole, the lodge at Waxahachie, Dorse Creek and the Muir Grove, which is nearby, which to me is almost like a holy place. It is so beautiful and a bit remote. The Grant Grove was saved, and the Grant Village was saved. But as we will see, the Redwood Grove, which is just south of the Grant Village, was completely destroyed. This beautiful grove of sequoias, burnt from roots to the very top of the trees. And part of this is because it was steep terrain, very impassable for the firefighters, very difficult, dense undergrowth, whereas the giant forest down here, rangers had been performing undergrowth burns, back burns for years, much like what the Native Americans did in their stewardship of these areas for thousands of years. But that saved it. And the Muir Grove, the firefighters up here by Dorse Creek, it's right outside of the trailhead is in the Dorse Creek campground. Firefighters lit backfires, and that helped save the Muir Grove. So this is showing some of the kind of like the scenes we saw last week and this week in Los Angeles, the red fire retardant and the water drops throughout the park at that time for 3 months. The fire was finally extinguished in December. And I think rains also helped. Here are the firefighters wrapping the General Sherman tree with building wrap. You can see how large this is. Christina and I were standing right here looking at the tree, 3 years later in 2024. And there was a huge crowd, but at this time they were raking it and removing, and then they had the wrap. And that's partly what helped save the largest tree in the world. And they did the same thing for other structures and trees as well. This was the original cabin/barn where the Buffalo Soldiers in part kept their horses around the turn of the 20th century. And this is in the Grant Grove. They completely wrapped this historic structure in building wrap to save it. And Christina and I were there. We actually met a very nice German family, and Christina was speaking to them in German. So, but this was saved by the firefighters with this building wrap 3.5 years ago. This is the Redwood Grove area, and the slopes nearby, completely decimated, completely decimated. And these are some of the sugar pines in that area, decimated. Backfires in the Muir Grove helped to save the trees, and the firefighters tried it and it worked. And here's the Redwood Grove, and as you could see, these sequoias here completely decimated, killed. And they're taking stock of what happened. You could see how steep this terrain was, very difficult. New growth the year after, or two. New growth in the woodlands below the giant forest and the sequoia belt. New growth to those plants as well. New growth within the park on some of the slopes. This was the view from the Ash Mountain entrance, the southerly entrance, the park headquarters in September of 2021 as the fire approached. They were able to save the park buildings, the headquarters complex, but this was bearing down on them. And yet, this is my windshield view from my car. This is the giant forest, and last year, looking lush and beautiful. And this is what I'm talking about. You drive up, and all of a sudden, you see these trees, and it's just breathtaking how beautiful they are and huge. This is what John Muir meant by the giant forest. And yet, as you drive along the General's Highway, this is what you see. You wind around, there'll be complete burns, although you can see some of the new growth underneath. And then this is like the Fresno entrance, the 180, Highway 180. It's green and lush. And that's Christina's car ahead of me. So we were caravanning in. And then teeing into the General's Highway and turning south, this is what we see. Whole slopes of burn. And then you'll turn a corner and it'll be like this. Here's our campground, and this is one of the prettiest campgrounds I've seen. It's just a lovely campground. This was our campsite. It's got a creek, lush undergrowth. We had deer. I felt for certain we were going to have bears because of this lovely little creek. No bears that we saw, but frogs. We had frogs, small ones, hopping up among the tents. Very, very nice creekside campsite. I couldn't ask for prettier. And there's Christina, and we're having our burgers. And there's the Christina Mobile behind her. So there was our salad and our burgers and our campfire. And it was just a really, really lovely campground. Quiet, peaceful. Here is the road in. It's again lush, very nice. This we toured because I wanted to tour the camp or the park, and Christina had her son coming in from Europe, and she wanted to know the park so they could tour. So this is the Sherman Tree Trail. They're in the giant forest. Very busy, very, very busy, as you can see, with a lot of hikers and visitors. And it's I wouldn't say it's ADA compliant. It's for the most part paved, but it's fairly steep steps. And it's surprising how steep it is to get down there and coming back. So just know that it's not flat. The Grant Grove is flatter if you would like that, a more ADA compliant area for family or for yourself if you wish. But this is absolutely lovely. And there's the Sherman Tree. The Congress Trail is there, part of the giant forest. Lovely, extensive. You could spend all day walking it and seeing the various groupings of sequoia. Doris Creek, as you can see, I'm really hoping that they open it this year We're supposed to have that word next month. Green and lush. And this is the way it always looks. It's in a very green, pretty area, kind of halfway between Lodgepole and Grant Grove. This is the typical meadow there. Warning, Dorst Creek is a bear freeway. It is, they sit out there on their behinds eating in the meadows. They will pass through your camp. It's full of deer, lots of wildlife. So if you're bear phobic, this may not be the place for you, but just keep your camp clean, keep everything in the bear box. They're the giant bear box lockers in every campground. Don't be sloppy with your food on your table or in your tent, and you'll be fine. There's never a problem. But absolutely lovely green lush. I think there had been bark beetling. The whole park. My spouse Maggie and I have noticed over the last 15 years the bark beetling and the die off of pines has been marked, just remarkable the last 15 years or so, if not more, 20. So there's that problem. They were taking out trees before the KNP complex fire, and then the fire, and then the damage from the two very heavy winters. So they've had a lot to contend with in some of these campgrounds, and hopefully they've gone in and taken care of what they need to at Dorst, because it would be nice to have a group site with all of us. Here's Crescent Meadow that I described, the gem of the Sierra, per John Muir. Lovely and green, full of bloomage, full of all kinds of wildflowers. And walking on the path there, this is very close to the trailhead of the High Sierra Trail. The parking area actually for the backpackers is there at Crescent Meadow, and a very nice place to picnic, full of people enjoying it and learning about the park. Here is Tharp's log, where he kept his cattle, and this was before the park, so it was in the 1870s, 1880s. Again, more of the view from General's Highway and what this is looking like. Again, the view from the sign there, the historic sign, which was also wrapped by the firefighters and saved, although the forest behind they were not able to save it. And just kind of closing here, I think it's important for us to go, both for the beauty that still exists, and for the togetherness of camping and the delight that camping always offers us. But I think it's important for us to go up and see California as it is now, so that we have a better understanding. I'm a prosecutor by trade, and I learned very early when I was starting out practicing law that from a mentor who told me, always go to the scene, always go to the scene. And that's the only way you understand what happened in the case. And I think that stands for us as Sierra Club members and people who go on outings. Go to the scene, go out to the mountains, go out to the deserts, see what's happening, understand. So I offer that for our trips this year and for this particular trip. Again, talking about conserving our world, our motto of explore, enjoy, and protect. Very important to do. And then I think the maxim here to get out there. And I think that's what we should do. And with that, I'll close. And then I'll stop my share. Are there any questions? Let's take a look at the chat here. Yes, we do. And looks like, yes, there are for people that are not tent campers, and Christina is writing here. For those who aren't tent campers, there are RV sites at some campgrounds, and of course lodges and cabins. So yes, and I would invite people, I'm not fussy about this. The group sites allow RVs. If you're an RVer or you're a van, a person with a van. I know Carla and her family have a camper van. come park it up by the campsite. I've had friends that did that. One of my friends was more comfortable doing that than being in a tent. By all means, let's just get out there by whatever means. Or if you want to come to a lodge and then just join us and drive up, from Waxahachie or down from Muir Lodge and join us in the campsite for the day's activities, come do that. Absolutely lovely, because we're going to have a range of hikes to do, of a range of difficulty, just like we did in the Eastern Sierra last September. John and his crew of super hikers went up to 11,000 feet at the Mono Pass, and others. And then I had a crew of folk that perhaps did not want to do that as much, and we toured the Eastern Sierra from Rock Creek Canyon to Bodie, and we had a wonderful day. Did Mono Lake and Levining and the Mammoth area, and just delightful. And stopping at Bodie State Historic Park to see the best ghost town in California.
So we have a question.
Yes,
What month were you there?
July. We were there in July, which is a lovely time to go. I prefer June and July in Sequoia. June is very fresh and beautiful and slightly less crowded. July was starting to get a little crowded for obvious reasons, kids out of school and whatnot. Um, so I'm hoping to be there in June or July.
What were the
Either
what were the temperatures like? The range,
the
night.
range was very mild. I don't think it got colder than the high 40s. Christina, I don't remember it being all that cold at night.
No, I don't think it was either. It was pretty decent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as usual, bring a good sleeping bag. I always bring all of my layers, even if I think it's going to be warm. I bring all my layers.
Yeah.
Summer in the
Me too.
Sierra, there's always thunderstorm activity in the afternoon, so you need to be cognizant of that. But it was in the 70s. It was very comfortable, and not that cold at night. Now, I've been there when it does dip into the low 40s, even the high 30s in the summer. So always be prepared. And I've been there during rainstorms too. So you gotta, have bring your rain fly. Do not leave a rain fly at home for your tent. You always want to have a rain fly to keep it as waterproof as you can. And don't be shy if you just want to sleep in your car, or just kind of bug out of the tent and go to the car, then by all means, whatever is comfortable for you. The point is to be outside and to take in the environment and the beauty and have a walk or a hike and enjoy it and be out there and go to the scene, as my mentor did back when I was a young lawyer. Go to the scene. Um, Looking
Yeah.
for other questions here.
No, there weren't any other questions. Comments thanking you for a great program.
Oh, that's delightful. I'm so glad. Um, Talking a lot, I realize, but I just wanted to give people the information and maybe sparking some thoughts about getting up there either with us this June or July or on your own, or with family. It's a beautiful, beautiful park. Really my favorite. I mean, Yosemite is the great temple of the Sierra, our great cathedral, but it is so crowded in the summer. The only place I go there in the summer is the high country. I know John and his family camped at White Wolf over the years, which is kind of midway up to the high country, and I've never tried that, but the valley is difficult in the summer, whereas Sequoia is not. And now that we found that Big Meadow campground, boy, that's the best kept secret there. If you can't get a national park campground, you go to go to recreation.gov and get the Forest Service, Big Meadow. What a delightful campground. And, I don't think people really know about it that much.
Yeah, it's kind of out there. It's a little bit off the beaten path in the park, but because when I was first
Yeah.
when I drove in there and stuff, I'm like, where am I going? Because it's about 5 miles in
Yeah,
the campground. It's a long campground with all these different areas you go down. It's not
yeah.
like a big one. It's just lengthwise it goes down and down. So, but yeah, it's pretty neat, especially if you want your peace and quiet out in nature. That's probably the better place to get it.
Absolutely delightful. And for a group of us, like the area where we were at, there were like two other campers, two or three other camping groups in sites, and we kind of had that area that full of quietude. So if we had multiple sites there, that would be delightful because it was kind of a little loop. They have about six of these little loops going along the creek there in Big Meadow, and just the best kept secret, boy.
Yeah, the campsites were not full because we were there during the week, even
Yeah.
though it was summer and vacation time for kids and teachers and stuff. That campground didn't have that many people in July during the week anyway. I
Yeah,
don't know what the weekends are like there, but
yeah. And I think we were what was it Sunday through Wednesday? I think it
no,
was
we went Monday. We went on a
Monday.
Monday.
Okay, Monday
Yeah,
through Thursday, because we had a couple nights.
yeah.
Um, Absolutely delightful and not expensive. Just a really economic way to go. I think it was less than $30 a night for just a beautiful little campsite. Um, to have the park experience, ranger talks and, being in the middle of things. Lodgepole is definitely that. It's quite crowded. I haven't camped there for a number of years before we discovered Dorst. Dorst. In fact, the time we camped at Lodgepole was Monica Lewinsky and Clinton. I remember listening to the radio as we went down the mountain about Monica Lewinsky. So that was in the late 90s. But Christina and I went in there. It was packed. It was completely full when we toured over there. But the convenience of it is you've got showers right there. You've got the store. You've got a lovely Tonopah Falls hiking trail out of there, which is kind of like Dorst Creek, which has the Muir Grove hiking trail, which is lovely and substantial. It's about a 4 mile round trip, and you have this like a chapel. It's just lovely and quiet and regal out there at Muir Grove. So much to go see.
So we had another question, which I think I can answer. Did you mention Tuolumne Meadows? Well, Tuolumne Meadows is in Yosemite. It's
Correct.
not in Sequoia.
I did mention it. That's the only place I will go in Yosemite in the summer, because the rebirth of or the increase in camping has escalated so much. The Yosemite Valley, I mean, it's always been pretty crowded. It is just unbelievable. I mean, to the point where you can't even find parking. You've got to get to Yosemite Valley quite early in the morning, park and leave your car. Um, it's just very, very tough. So unless you have accommodations in the valley, or you're lucky enough to get a campsite in one of the valley campgrounds, you're going to have a difficult experience there. Um, Tuolumne is quite different. It was badly the campgrounds there were badly damaged in the winter of 22. I was up there in summer of 2023, and the ranger quarters had been destroyed. The backpacking permit office had been destroyed. The cafeteria to the campground had been destroyed. By last year, a lot of that was being rebuilt, and I think it's open for business this year in Tuolumne. But they were asking the rangers that were staffing that Tioga Pass entry point into Yosemite. They were living out of their cars. It's pathetic. It was bad in 2023. So I think they have rebuilt from all that winter damage from that tremendous winter of 2022. We had Snowmageddon in the San Bernardinos here. Well, they had 200% snowpack up there. It was just crushing. Uh, yes. Do we drive to Tuolumne via Lee Vining from the 395? Yes. Uh, I think it's Highway, what, 120 that goes up over the Tioga Pass from Lee Vining. And you'll know it when you come up 395. And we toured this. It's the funniest thing, but it's pretty famous. There's a big mobile station, mobile gas station, but it's become kind of the almost as big as the village of Lee Vining. Practically, it's just really very busy. They have kind of a renowned, if you can believe this, a cafe, a restaurant at that mobile. A chef was there, and he was known for his fish tacos, fresh fish tacos, which are utterly delicious, pretty authentic. And so everybody goes there for these huge plates of, clamshells of takeaway boxes of fish tacos. So you go up there for a good lunch. You have views looking over Mono Lake, and that mobile station is where 120 goes up into the Tioga Pass. So that's the place to stop and kind of get any supplies in Lee Vining or gas or what. Although the gas is horribly expensive there, $7 a gallon.
So
Last
another question about Tuolumne, about the reservation system. Is it still at midnight at on October 1st? You have a competition to get a reservation? Do you know?
Uh, it's it's on a rolling basis. Go to recreation.gov for the reservations. It's basically 6-month rolling reservation system. So for summer, you need to be thinking about it now. Go to recreation.gov and put in Tuolumne Meadows and see what they tell you. It's been a while since I camped there. It's been about 11, 12 years, but I think it's a rolling 6 month.
Mhm.
So check it out. Recreation.gov is the website for reservations for all of these campgrounds that we've talked about.
Okay,
Okay.
well, thank you very much, Julianne. I think I'm going to stop the recording.